Let's do a thought experiment. Assume I give you $10,000 and a book that teaches the exact method for converting your money into $1 million by the end of the month. The only requirement is that you must follow its instructions perfectly. Now, how would you go about learning from this book? Would you read it or would you dissect it? Learning is a skill for you to develop. It's like playing the piano or speaking a foreign language. And if you're going to improve at it, you must pay attention to how you work. In today's video, I'm going to share with you a 4-step framework I developed called DIRT, D-I-R-T, which will help you learn new things. And I will also share with you a book recommendation to make your note-taking system more organized. All right, let's get philosophical. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Read Well podcast. Now, to be the kind of person who has consistent and valuable ideas, something I'm trying to figure out in my own personal life, you need a system to leverage your thinking. It's not enough to try and remember concepts or scratch thoughts on random pieces of paper or log them into your computer. This is what I'm guilty of. I think, I'll remember that. That's a good idea, but I don't really treat the idea seriously enough and I ultimately lose it. Okay, before we get into the honest truth of how to think about building a system for learning, we have some problems as human beings when it comes to learning new information. In fact, there are 4 problems you have anytime you want to learn something new. First, you are not designed to remember everything you read. I wish I was sort of. In fact, if I remembered everything I was presented with, I probably would go crazy. We have this biological pressure valve in our minds that allows information to pass through. You might call it autopilot. And I'm grateful for that feature because at the end of a long day, I'm mentally exhausted. If I retained every detail, I'd probably hide in my bedroom. The concern is that this feature can also make learning new things difficult, and we have to work really hard if we're going to imprint something for the long term. Now, the second problem with being human and trying to learn something new is that we're physically impaired. We get tired, we suffer brain fog, we're emotional creatures. Being human means accepting the physical problems of an imperfect body. And the older I get, the more these show up. The third problem is that most of us deal with some level of self-conscious weight. So we might think we're not smart enough or capable of learning hard things. And these are lies, and they keep us from the honest truth. Really, we just don't want to do the work. And that leads to the last limitation. We need to talk about laziness. So we all suffer from this. It creeps in at all times, and it asks us to take shortcuts, to do the work later, and to relax. There's a really great quote from A.G. Sertalange in his book, The Intellectual Life. He said, "The great enemy of knowledge is our indolence, that native sloth which shrinks from effort, which does indeed consent now and then capriciously to make a big effort, but soon relapses into careless automatism." So what he's saying is that the big enemy of you doing your life's work, of learning new things and applying that knowledge, is just being lazy, of not putting the work in. And every now and then you'll get this burst of energy that's like, I'm going to do this, but then you just kind of slide back into your old ways of living. So to develop the skill of learning, which is what we're talking about today, you have to overcome laziness at all costs. I just referenced this book, The Intellectual Life. We're going to talk about how your learning system really needs to have 3 features in it, and then I'll give you my 4-step framework. I was thinking about this because we read this book in book club recently, and there's a quote that I really like. He said in here, "Do you want to do intellectual work? Begin by creating within you a zone of silence, a habit of recollection, a will to renunciation and detachment, which puts you entirely at the disposal of work. Acquire that state of soul unburdened by desire and self-will, which is the state of grace of all the intellectual workers. Without that, you will do nothing, at least nothing worthwhile." So I love that because Sertalange is saying, hey, look, if you want to do something interesting, you're going to have to create some space in your life for that. It's going to have to be simple. It's going to have to work for you, but you got to put in the time to build a life where you can be intellectual and do good work. So you need a personal system to learn new things. Otherwise, your physical limitations are going to win the war almost every time. And as I spoke about in the beginning, you have a unique way of learning, which means that you need to take an active part in designing a system that makes sense to you. There are tons of gurus on YouTube who are going to show you step-by-step methods for note-taking systems and memorization. And those examples are great as long as you don't follow them blindly. So you kind of need to experiment with them to see what works for you and what doesn't. This is important though. Your system will be more resilient against clutter and rot if you can manage to follow 3 tenets. The first is simplicity. You want your learning platform to be uncomplicated. It shouldn't have these rules and multiple steps, or you're not going to use it. Essentially, the harder it is to add something to your knowledge base, the less frequently you'll use it. This is called friction in learning. We don't want friction. The second tenet of your learning system should be accessibility. So your platform needs to be with you at all times so that you can add new ideas to it when they come up. And the third idea is idea promotion. This is my favorite one, where your platform needs to process new notes in such a way that as you combine them with other interesting notes, new ideas are organically promoted. The next quote is coming from the book recommendation for today. I will be sharing with you How to Take Smart Notes by Sanka Ahrens. But before we get into that book, let's hear what he has to say. Mr. Ahrens says a good structure is something you can trust. He's talking about the structure of your note-taking system, your learning system. It should relieve you from the burden of remembering and keeping track of everything. If you can trust a system, you can let go of the attempt to hold everything together in your head, and you can start focusing on what's important, the content, the argument, and the ideas. So again, we'll talk about this in the book recommendation of this video, but his goal here is to help you be a better thinker and a better writer by taking smart notes. It's a good book. Okay, let's get into the 4-step framework for how you can begin thinking about your knowledge system. Again, if you want to learn something new, whether it's playing the guitar or piano, maybe learning French, or maybe you want to learn a philosophical discipline of some kind. Whatever it is, you're going to need a system to manage that information. And I'd like to offer this framework to help you build that. Now, I labeled it the acronym DIRT, D-I-R-T. I don't know why. Sometimes things just happen the way they do. I kind of thought it was funny, but it's also really memorable because it's dirt. So D stands for decide. And this is the first step of the model. You really have to decide if a piece of information is worth understanding. This is an important step because you're going to invest time, resources, and mental energy on the topic. You really need to consider if it's worth the effort to be truly understood. Now, most ideas can be skimmed by watching a casual YouTube video, but they're not understood and applied. The act of truly integrating something in your life is going to be an investment on your part, so you have to decide to put in the effort. Okay, I is the second stage of the framework today, and I stands for internalize. So once you've decided to learn something new, it's critical that you internalize how that knowledge is going to benefit you. Now, if we go back to the thought experiment of the $10,000, you can see the benefit, right? If you do exactly as the book says, you're going to earn $1 million in 30 days. That same idea goes for learning philosophy, aviation, or a musical instrument. You have to find value in what you're studying or you're not going to retain it. Okay, once you've made the topic important mentally, make sure to invest the time into a quality set of notes that reflect the significance of the concept. So sloppy notes send a message to your subconscious that the piece of knowledge just isn't important. If, however, you take the time to write well, to link concepts and ask if your note is durable to your future needs, and by that, all I mean is that it's going to last throughout your life. Whether you're 20, 30, 60, 80, you can return to that note and get value out of it. That means it's durable. That's a signal to your brain that the topic is worth the effort. So create a quality note for an idea that you care about. The third step in our framework is R, which stands for revisit. So we need more than one exposure to an idea to retain it. A great study session is a start, but it's really not enough. Your learning program must have a way to resurface your ideas a few times within the next week or so. I like to visit an idea I've learned twice within the coming week. I'll go back to my notes, I'll read through them, and then I'll reconsider why that information was important. The last step is T, which stands for teach. It's the final step, and it's the hardest step, but don't skip it. You think you understand something until you have to do a 30-minute presentation on it. Formalizing a concept into a presentation forces you to understand it on a deeper, more meaningful level. Find a way to teach what you learn online, at work, or within your family. You might feel awkward here, worried that it's pretentious to go out teaching everyone. Trust me, I know how that feels. But it doesn't have to be. You can share what you've learned in a humble and informative way. Okay, for this week's book recommendation, I'd like to send you to How to Take Smart Notes by Sanka Ahrens. This is a small book. It's under 150 pages, I believe, pretty close to that. Now, I hesitate to share this because I don't want to send you down a rabbit hole, but it is a good book for beginning to learn new things because his goal is twofold from my perspective. One is to teach you how to think about note taking so that it is simple, clear, and concise. But two is to document a process by a gentleman named Niklas Luhmann, who created something called the Zettelkasten. Zettelkasten is just German, it means slip box. And the idea was this writer, Mr. Luhmann, would take extensive notes, but he would do them on 3x5 cards, and then he would file them away in a really large, somewhat complicated filing structure. There are lots of people that love to craft Zettelkastens today. It's not something I keep up personally. I've done them in the past. So I wouldn't read this book necessarily to learn how to do a Zettelkasten. One, because it doesn't go into great detail on the step-by-step process on how to do it. It does walk you through the main ideas, but you're not going to walk away from this book going, I perfectly understand Zettelkastens. What you will walk away with is an appreciation for strong notes, and you'll have a better understanding of how you can craft them for yourself. Hey, if you found this video helpful, I want to thank you for watching, and also to remind you to go to thereadwellpodcast.com where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter. It is free. If you're interested in getting insights on how to read deeply, as well as getting book recommendations from me each week, that's where you